There are those of us who, when we purchase a product, we purchase the product. And there are those of us who think about it more as a journey. And I think it's good to think about both of those aspects when you're purchasing something as expensive and big and seemingly solid as a Tesla. Let's take a look. Hey all, it's Dr. Know-It-All, so I'm coming to you from my parents' house. You can tell, different background. Also, this is going to make a little bit of noise, but I want to show this off because I just got this. Rode NT USB Plus, just got it. Hopefully this is going to improve my sound quality a little bit. Normally I'll keep it out of the picture, but just the way it works with the laptop and all of that stuff, it's in the picture right now. So anyway, hopefully this will all work out well, and I'm looking forward to giving this a try. It's got a lot of software controls, and it's also, of course, USB based, and so hopefully it will function much better than the old version, which was a Rode NTK, which is a great microphone, but it's a mono only, and so sometimes it just, anyway, it was a problem. Onward to the topic du jour. I wanted to talk about, I've been talking to a lot of people in the last several months about their experiences with Teslas, and I'm starting to realize that there is a divide in terms of the way people think about their Tesla, and it really changes their experience with it. So the first person is the kind of person that purchases, I don't know, something like this. So I don't know, this is at my parents' house, but you purchase something like this Phytoplex botanical nutrient sensitive skin, thing, and you buy that, and then that's what you get. You get a product, and you utilize the product. In other words, you utilize the cream, you put it on your hands, everybody's happy, you use it up, and then you purchase more, or you go to a different brand or something. That's product thinking. A different way to think about this is much more along the lines of the journey. So, right. So you think about to yourself, like, I don't know, I often think when I climb mountains, for example, when I climb the mountain, it's much less about getting to the summit, because that's like just a second out of this whole thing. But there are months of training, and then there are, potentially weeks of travel, and then multiple days of climbing potentially. So it's really much more about the progression of the journey of the event rather than the actual thing that most people think about. They're like, ooh, you summited this mountain. But it's like, no, actually what's interesting is the 6 months that I spent hauling a really heavy backpack around, walking and things like that. And then the travel to it, and then the climbing, and then the weather being uncooperative, stuff like that. All of those kinds of things sort of tail into it and make the journey far more interesting than the experience. In terms of products, I think when I was a child, really, and I'm old, so, we're talking about back in the 70s, that when you purchased a product, you really had to purchase a product. That was it. That was all you ever got out of that product. But what happened was, as we went into the 80s and personal computers started to come about, it became much more something that you could purchase a product, but specifically you could purchase something like a game or something like that, or a piece of software like Microsoft Excel or whatever it would be. And you could then update it. It wasn't the end of the story when you purchased a product. You could purchase a product, and then it could be upgraded and become substantially better than the version of it prior to that. Now, in general, we kind of put a dividing line between software and hardware even today, but I would say, I was going to point to my phone, but that's what's filming right now, so I can't point to it. So anyway, this is very cool, by the way. I really like this, what's it called? Continuity cam on the Mac. It's very, very nice, and it uses a much better, camera than what's on my laptop. So anyway, between this and this, you should be getting great stuff. So anyway, but when you think about like your phone, you don't just get the hardware, you get the software as well. You get the iOS software, the Android software. And then if you get the next version of that software, you get some extra features and things. Eventually, the hardware, of course, does become old enough that you can't install the new features, and then you need to go and get yourself a new phone. So there's a weird kind of both things. It's both the journey and the destination at the same time in terms of purchasing this, but you do get much more of the feeling of having something that can evolve over time after you purchase it. And then I think up until Tesla, I really can't think of anybody else prior to Tesla, but prior to them, if you purchase something large and complex like a car, an automobile, That's a product. You get that, and maybe you could take it to a service center and get an emergency like upgrade, right? If they do a recall and they're like, your engine could blow up if you press the gas pedal too hard, which was literally what happened with our Mazda CX-5. They were like, bring it in. We need to do this electronic fix because otherwise, under the very specific circumstances, if you hit the gas pedal too hard, the engine can actually explode. So I'm saying this is a real thing. But that's an error fix. That's a correction for something that went horribly, horribly wrong. So it does give you a slight upgrade to your vehicle because it's not going to explode on you, but it's not like a really new vehicle. Now, obviously, for anybody who's owned a Tesla, who's had one, that it's much more like Christmas all the time. And I'm actually very frustrated right now because I'm still on FSD Beta software 10.69.2, and I was really hoping for 10.3.1 sometime soon. I assume it'll happen at some point, but anyway, we'll see. But it's like a little Christmas present every time that happens. You get this little like, oh, hey, there's a new piece of software that you get with that. And I think that that's a critically different way of looking at something as big and solid and kind of monolithic, the way people think about automobiles. You purchase the automobile and you drive it for 10 or 15 or however long years it lasts, and then eventually it ends up in the junkyard. And then it hopefully gets recycled into a new product at some point. But anyway, that's a product. It's a monolithic thing. It's just something you get and you utilize it as it is. The way that Tesla works is much more software based, even though it's hardware. Now, of course, your hardware isn't being updated all the time, but so much of the hardware is so flexible that it is being upgraded effectively, like your phone, but it's even more effective, that you're getting substantial upgrades in the quality of your vehicle since the time you purchase it. Certainly, I mean, just the full self-driving aspect of it with my Tesla Model Y. Like when we got it, we had the full self-driving package. We purchased that, but it wasn't fantastic. It did really well on the highway, which it's still doing until we get to version 11 that will replace that with the new FSD beta stuff. But in terms of city street driving and stuff, it just simply kind of didn't exist. I guess there was a basic level at which it existed, but it was not very usable. And now it's very, very different. We have access to all of that, and we have a really, really substantially drivable piece of software that still, while it's ADAS, while it's still automated driver assistance system, it's getting much, much closer to being able to drive on its own without you having to intervene. And I personally, as I visit my parents near Washington, D.C., I don't know this area particularly well. I tend to utilize full self-driving a lot here because I don't know where I'm going, and the highways around here are crazy. And so oftentimes you have to be in the far right lane and then immediately be in the far left lane and then, in these middle things. So the full self-driving kind of is able to navigate that better than me. I would probably be making mistakes and missing turns and, having to go out of my way and stuff. So I think that you get an amazing benefit out of having this full self-driving that wasn't there 2 years ago when we purchased our vehicle. So I think that that's a really important way of looking at it. So when I talk about people's personality and how there's a difference in the way people think about things, there are people who I call like the beta tester type people. There are people who love to play at the edges, and they're okay with things not working particularly well sometimes, right? I mean, everybody has a limit. If something just, if you turn on your computer and it simply doesn't turn on because it's a beta, that's like, well, that's frustrating. So, right, then you're not going to enjoy spending the next day trying to troubleshoot it and figure out what's going on. But, if you're willing, if you're one of those people who's willing to make the trade of testing out very, very early on beta software that could have some significant problems with it in order to get the latest toys, the new stuff, to see that first before everybody else. There was a time when I programmed, I did a lot of apps actually for the iOS, for the Apple App Store for the phone, and actually for the watch too. But anyway, I did that until it just became it wasn't commercially viable anymore because too many big companies got involved. But I would program for that. And so in order to do that, I was always using the latest beta of all of these different pieces of software. And of course, it could be pretty janky and it could break sometimes. But it was very well worth it to be able to have access to that software early so that I could then drop a piece of software as soon as that rolled out to the public. I would be able to hit it with a new piece, this is the latest thing. It's using the latest software. So there's a very worthwhile aspect to that. And that sort of attitude has stuck with me. I'm fine with the car. As we were driving here, actually, we had this crazy thing where the full self-driving computer actually just completely went out. So the car was blind. You could see the car and it was just black all around it. Like, you know, the vision system, you couldn't see anything. So you couldn't use cruise control. You couldn't use anything. And it was a frustrating experience. But I gather that part and parcel of that is, you know, part of being beta software is that you can overtax the system sometimes. And essentially it just crashes and it has to reset. So we went into dinner, left it plugged in at a supercharger for like, I think 35 or 40 minutes. The thing went into deep sleep mode and came back out again and reset itself. So there are ways that are more aggressive to do that, but we were able to do it just through time, essentially. But you know, when you play at the edges of things, some weird stuff like that can happen. And also the beta software can make mistakes. Sometimes it can do stuff that doesn't work quite right. But that is all, in my mind, completely offset by the fact that I'm getting to play with technology that is, you know, kind of science fiction. It's like, it still feels to me as like, how is this car actually doing this? This is nuts that this car is drive. I think after having it for a little over a year now, I think I'm getting used to it, but it's still kind of the craziest thing in the world that this car can actually drive itself around and I can, you know, monitor it, but I don't have to drive it. And under 99 point something percent of the time if I choose to do that. So that's pretty incredible stuff that I get to play at that. So anyway, a person like me is happy. And so my experience is good with the vehicle. There are people who are less inclined to be that kind of person, to think about it as a journey, as a process, as helping to develop something and to be on that cutting edge. And people like that, I've tended to notice, are less satisfied with their car. And I mean, in general, they probably are not the ones who are going to be using full self-driving beta, but what they also do is if something goes wrong with a software upgrade, those are the people who most vociferously complain about it. I'm usually like, okay, this thing broke and I can see what they were doing. They were trying to upgrade this and then they kind of broke a little something over here and they'll fix it the next go around and it'll be fine. And so I'm pretty patient in terms of that, but there are a lot of people that I know who are much less patient about that. They're like, I want this thing and I want it to work. And those in my mind are more the destination or the product people. They're the people who like, I want this, I want it to work. I don't want to have to think about it. The people who are more on the journey end of things and the process end of things and understand that this is a process and that's something that's going to take time to achieve fully, right? This is, again, you know, just like the early days with the Apple iPhone, I guess, and Android also, although I didn't use it so much back then, but in the 2000 aughts, the later 2000 aughts, every new phone was a significant upgrade. Every new software OS was a significant upgrade. Now, when we go from iPhone OS, whatever, say 15 to 16, I don't even remember the numbers anymore, but you know, the changes have become very incremental. Now, I really do like this continuity cam. And like I said, I enjoy that. That's an upgrade from my phone and my laptop and my recording experience, but it becomes smaller and smaller upgrades. So I could see Tesla eventually 5 or 10 years from now that the software upgrades are going to start to become more and more minor over time. That's just the way it goes as something becomes mature. But at this point, we get to go along for the ride. We get to enjoy the process and the journey, and the cost of that, the cost of entry, aside from the monetary cost, is that you just have to understand that things are going to break. Even some things that worked before are going to work less well with the next software upgrade. That's the basic thing. And so if you're a person who is of that sort of mindset, you're going to have a much better experience with driving a Tesla than if you're a person who's just like, I just want it to work. I never want to have to think about it. I want to get in my car every morning and have it be exactly the same as it was a year ago. You know, I guess what you could do is just never upgrade your Tesla software. You could just leave it. I don't recommend that. I don't think that's a good idea, but you could do that if you were really locked in or something. So I would be curious to know what you all think about that, because in my mind, I think that's the divide, is that there's people who are about the process, about the journey, kind of beta testing sort of, you know, mentality. And then there's people who are much less. They're like, I don't want to beta test. I just want it to work. I want it to be the way it is. I never want to have to think about it. And I want it to be a product. I want it to be like my pair of glasses that will never change until I get a new pair of glasses, right? So that kind of a thing is a very different mindset, and I think it changes people's experience. So if you have been frustrated with Tesla and you are more of a product kind of person, then, you know, you may not be able to change your personality. That's who you are. But if you can at least open your mind to the possibility that it could be something that go like, okay, take a breath, yeah, this thing that used to work better now works a little bit worse, but they'll fix that in the next go around and it'll be okay. If you can kind of do that and relax into the fact that this is a process, not a product, I think you will have a better time with that. All right, definitely let me know what you think in the comments. And also, please let me know what you think about the new microphone and all of that kind of stuff. I do try. I know I make mistakes sometimes and like the audio quality is not that great, but hopefully this is good. I haven't had a chance to test it out. We'll find out very, very shortly after I stop this recording. Anyway, everybody have a great day. Thank you always to my Patreon patrons so much. I really do appreciate it. Obviously, check out all the links to that, the merch store, subscribe, like all of those good things. And I will see you all soon. Bye-bye.